Hello, everyone, and thank you for your interest in the Urban Creativity in Africa series. My name is Fiona Drummond, and I will be presenting part of my PhD research entitled Zoom Towns, Creative Migration in South Africa in Response to Remote Working. And I am based at Rhodes University in South Africa. So before getting further into the presentation and the idea of Zoom towns, we will first discuss where creativity tends to locate. So within the literature, there is an urban bias that can be traced back to the work of Richard Florida and Charles Landry, both of whom suggest that the culture and creative industries and creative workers tend to locate in cities where they can take advantage of the hard infrastructure that the city has to offer, as well as the soft infrastructure, such as networks. And this is particularly important for the functionality of the cultural and creative industries, which tends to be project-based. The project-based nature of the culture and creative industries also means that many of the workers within these sectors are freelancers. An imaginary geography of creativity has formed, as cities are seen to be the prime locations of culture and creative activity. However, this is not the case in reality, as culture and creative industries and creative workers have been found in non-metropolitan spaces. These include secondary cities, peripheral areas of cities, suburban areas, and small towns. This research has mainly been based on cases from the global north, though there have been some more recent research on the global south, in particularly South Africa. In the cases of the non-metropolitan places, culture and creative workers tend to be attracted by the lifestyle that these places have to offer. In contrast to the city, they tend to have a range of natural amenities, a community feel, maybe a cheaper cost of living, and they're often seen as a good place to raise a family, or alternatively to slow down as one nears retirement. In this way, the location of culture and creative workers, as well as those in other occupations, is linked to the life cycle. With the rise of remote working, these places may have become more attractive as they are more accessible, and as the technology now allows people to work from home and to be more virtually mobile. COVID-19 may have further accelerated this existing trend as people across the globe worked from home as a measure to try and stop the spread of COVID-19. And this is something that has stayed with us today, with the wide acceptance of remote working. So before we go any further, I'll just discuss the methods. So South Africa does not have much data that tracks people's location or migration. A mixed method approach was thus used. Firstly, we start with property transaction data from a company, Lightstone, and this is for selected Zoom towns and primary cities, so ranging across the urban hierarchy for the period of 2019 to 2022. So the year prior to COVID-19, in the midst of COVID-19, and then the recovery period. These are for people more generally across South Africa, and so to narrow in on cultural and creative workers, a combination of interviews and focus groups with key stakeholders was used, as well as an online survey of creative freelancers. In both cases, questions were asked about where people tend to locate and what may influence whether people can locate in these places and what might be attractive to them. In terms of the analysis, a combination of GIS mapping was used alongside geospatial and temporal statistics and a thematic analysis of the interviews. Looking at the context of South Africa, firstly looking at the map, the location of cultural occupations in South Africa tends to be based on the Western Cape, in Gauteng province, and in KwaZulu-Natal. These are the three provinces within South Africa that contain our three large metros. So we can see that in this case, the metropolitan areas do tend to be prime. However, with remote working, there may be opportunities for non-metropolitan places, both within these three provinces and within the provinces that do not contain large metros. These other non-metropolitan places, with the rise of remote working, have been coined Zoom towns. They tend to be picturesque, smaller cities and towns that attract remote workers for lifestyle purposes. Looking at the survey of creative freelancers, 72% of respondents said that they worked from home during the pandemic, and 91% used an online adaptation strategy to be able to continue their work. Looking forward into the future, 51% said that they wish to continue with flexible working, maybe working from home, or alternatively using multiple work locations. And 59% said that they wish to continue with hybrid working, so using a combination of both online and in person. In South Africa, the media has highlighted the Zoomtown phenomenon, with headlines such as these frequently appearing. All of these articles were published between 2020 and 2022, and shows that indeed the Zoomtown phenomenon is very popular within South Africa, even suggesting that the Zoom boom sparks a city exodus as people move out in search of better lifestyle conditions. However, the question is, does the data support these claims? In order to answer this, we first have a look at the number of total property transactions from 2019 to 2020. So these are property transactions, and so it only includes property purchases. It does not include those who may have been renting. And we also cannot tell if people moved into these places or perhaps just bought the property as an investment. However, with the lack of data in South Africa, this allows us to look at the growth in the property transactions over time. So first off, we can see that from the 2019 level in 2020, there was a drop-off in terms of transactions really across the board as the pandemic was at its height. However, by 2021 and 2022, we do see a recovery. The cities of Johannesburg in Gauteng province and Cape Town in the Western Cape are clearly prime with the greatest number of transactions. And these are mapped using proportional circles, where the greater the size of the circle, the greater the number of transactions. However, it's not just cities that are showing growth. If we look at some of the coastal areas especially, we can see that they are also experiencing growth. This includes George as a secondary city, Mossel Bay, Jeffreys Bay, and Margate as smaller coastal towns, and then Umhlanga Rocks as well as a suburban area of one of the metros, Durban. But it's not just the coastal areas that are showing growth. There are inland areas that are doing so as well. If we look at places that are close to Johannesburg, around Gauteng province, Bryanston is a suburb of Johannesburg, and Heidelberg is on the periphery of the city. Both of those have shown growth. And Hartbeespoort, even though it is in a neighboring northwest province, it is still within easy commuting distance to the city. So this indicates that there are certain characteristics that may make a Zoom town. All of these are particularly picturesque areas, whether it be coastal or inland, close to perhaps mountains, hills, or dams and rivers. So these are the lifestyle offerings that may be attractive to people, as well as the greater space and cheaper cost of living. If we have a look at the percentage change in terms of the number of transactions, we can see here in the first column in red that in 2020, the number of transactions across the board, apart from Hartbeespoort, fell. However, we do then see the recovery starting to kick in 2021, and the same for 2022. However, I'll focus now on the last column here, which is the percentage change in 2022 from 2019. So this is looking at then the effect of remote working of the pandemic. So we're looking at pre-pandemic 2019 and towards the end of the pandemic in 2022. So if we look here, we can see that cities are growing at just over 13% from their 2019 level. But if we look at the non-metropolitan spaces, so outskirts of a metropolitan area, a secondary city, small coastal towns, as well as inland towns, across the board, there tends to be a greater growth levels. If we look at these growth levels, it's not just a retirement phenomenon. So looking at the same map, but now including age groups, we can see in yellow that that is quite a small proportion over time and within each of the 12 places across the urban hierarchy, showing that this is not just a retirement phenomenon. In fact, it's mainly people who are under 49 years of age, so the main working age population, who are purchasing properties in these areas, and these are represented by the green and the red in these diagrams. This is actually also backed up by the interview and the survey data. So if we have a look at the locality of survey respondents by career stage, we can see that those who are emerging or early career and those who tend to be younger tend to prefer to be in a primary city or metropolitan area. But once they are more established, they've had some career success. So those at both the mid-career level and who feel that they're established within their careers. Cities still remain important, but they are more dispersed, showing that they have greater options. According to the interview data, it was suggested that for people who were younger and those who were early career or emerging, a city was beneficial as that is where you could create the networks and find job opportunities. By the time you had built a reputation, so you were mid-career established, you could rely on your networks to continue to find work as a freelancer. And so at that point, more location options opened up to you where you no longer had to be located in a city, but could perhaps move out to a smaller city, a secondary city such as George, or even a small town, perhaps those that were the coastal ones that we discussed earlier, or perhaps some of the inland ones. Though again, it was highlighted in interviews that it is important to remain connected to a city, and that would be the temporary mobility from the literature, where, for example, you may need to send work to the city, to a gallery, for example, to be sold, or to attend meetings with clients, or even to meet as a team to brainstorm ideas. However, it may also be the case that in a smaller space, a secondary city or a small town, you can grow your reputation before moving to the city. So what this tends to mean is that there are more options that have been made available by the rise of remote working. So in conclusion, there is some evidence to support Zoom towns as smaller places have faster growth rates than primary cities following the pandemic, and it's not just a retirement phenomenon. However, not all places are suited to be Zoom towns. The rise of remote working does also not indicate that these cities have gone into decline, as we can see that they are still prime. However, as Anne Marcuson suggests, artists work everywhere. So the rise of remote working and its widespread acceptance may offer creatives and those in other occupations more choices for where they choose to locate for work based on lifestyle and what they may require. And it may also be based on your career stage and phase of life. Thank you very much for your interest. If there are any questions about the research, you're more than welcome to email me at the address there. Thank you very much.